My wife shrieked at 2 a.m. demanding $22,000 for her son's hospital bill. I told her to call his real father, hung up, and by sunrise, the police were reading my name off felony paperwork. That night started in my bed in Toledo, Ohio, with the furnace clicking like it couldn't decide if it wanted to live. February cold pressed against the windows and made the floorboards bite through your socks. The house was a plain little ranch on a quiet street near Alexis Road, paid off modest, the kind of place old men brag about because it means nobody owns you but the county tax office. Elaine wasn't in bed again. Fell asleep on the couch she'd set after dinner, eyes glued to her phone. The other side of the mattress was empty and cool, and I told myself not to read into it. 17 years of marriage teaches you how to swallow questions. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, twice. Then the screen lit up, Elaine. I checked the clock, 2:17 a.m. I answered, Frank. She hit me with panic. Frank, oh my God, Kyle's in the hospital. He's hurt bad. They're saying he might have to just suffer through the night if we don't pay the deposit. In the background, fluorescent hum, a PA system, wheels squeaking on tile. Hospital sounds, or at least sounds that wanted you to think hospital. Where are you? I asked. I'm with him, she said, breathy and sharp at the same time. They need cash. They need $22,000 right now. I sat up the room smelling like old wood and the menthol rub I'd used on my shoulders. $22,000. Yes, they said if we can't pay the deposit, they can't give him the stronger pain meds. He'll be stuck with the whole bill. Kyle Benson was 29, Elaine's only child. When I met him, he was 12 and skinny as a fence post, all elbows and attitude. I taught him to throw a baseball in the backyard and later how to drive in the church parking lot after Sunday service. I never adopted him. Elaine always said we'd do it later. Later never came, but the bills sure did. A dead battery at Meijer, a rent mix-up, a new job that needed tools. And every time Elaine would look at me with those watery eyes and say, he's trying Frank like trying, was the same thing as doing. I swung my legs out of bed and stepped onto the cold floor. What happened to him? A fight, she said quickly. At a casino. He got jumped. He's in agony. Casino. My stomach tightened. Kyle liked casinos the way some men like fishing, said it was relaxing, said he had a system. I'd heard that word before from guys at the plant who'd lost their whole checks by Wednesday. Which hospital? I asked. Barton, she said, then added too fast, South Lake Tahoe. Tahoe. I stared at the dark window, the streetlight turning the snow piles gray. My pickup sat in the driveway, salt crusted along the wheel wells. Real life was here. This emergency was 800 miles away. Elaine kept talking. My Zelle limit is maxed. The cards are Frank, it's complicated. I need you to send it. Wire it, Venmo it, anything. I'll pay you back Monday, I swear. Why can't you pay? I asked. A beat. Then she went softer the way she got when she wanted me to fold. Because we're tapped out, honey, and he's crying. He's asking for you. That old reflex flared, reach for your wallet, fix it, prove you're a good man. I felt it in my hands like they were already opening the banking app. Then another thought slid in behind it, clear as ice. She kept saying my son, not our son, my son. I remembered the last emergency call, 3:05 a.m. 2 summers ago. Elaine swearing Kyle needed money for a medical deductible. I sent it. A week later, I saw a photo on Facebook, Kyle in a nightclub bottle in his hand, grinning like a kid who'd found a cheat code. I'd confronted Elaine. She'd cried. I'd apologized for overreacting. That was the rhythm of my life. I paid, then I apologized. I swallowed. Elaine, call his father. Silence. Then her voice turned flat. Excuse me. Call Kyle's real father, I said. My voice wasn't loud. It was steady, like when you find a cracked part and you don't argue with it, you replace it. I'm not doing this anymore. Frank, that man is not in our lives. And I am, I asked, because right now you're talking to me like I'm a debit card. How can you say that when he's in a hospital bed, she snapped. How can you demand $22,000 at 2 a.m, I said, and refuse to explain anything besides pay? He needs help. You're his family. Her voice climbed into a scream. In the background, someone said, ma'am, please, and Elaine plowed right over it. If you don't send it, he'll suffer all night. My hand tightened around the phone. I pictured my pension file in the drawer, the paid-off house, the quiet life I'd earned one shift at a time. I pictured every time I'd said yes because guilt was easier than fighting. I exhaled slow. I'm going back to sleep. Frank, go sit to your mom. Call his real father, I repeated. Good night, Elaine. I ended the call. My heart was thumping, but underneath it was an empty space where guilt usually lived. I powered the phone off black screen, no more buzzing, and lay back down. The furnace clicked. The house settled. Outside, somewhere down the block, a plow scraped the street like sandpaper. And I slept, like a man who finally put down a box he'd been carrying for years. I woke up to sunlight slicing through the blinds and the smell of stale coffee from the timer I'd forgotten to reset. For about 5 seconds, my mind was empty. Then the memory of the call slid back in cold and sharp. I sat on the edge of the bed, feet on the same cold floor, and felt something unfamiliar lightness. No buzzing phone, no knot in my chest, just quiet. I showered, shaved, and put on my work hoodie, even though it was my day off. Old habit. When you've worked a plant floor for 35 years, you dress like you might get called in. I was pouring coffee when my phone lit up again. Unknown number. I let it ring. It stopped. Then rang again. Same number. I answered, Frank Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, a man said, calm and practiced. This is Officer Daniel Rizzo with the Dearborn Police Department in Michigan. Are you the stepfather of Kyle Benson? The mug paused halfway to my mouth. I'm married to his mother, I said. Why is Dearborn calling me? There was a soft rustle of paper. Your name came up during an incident report from last night. Mr. Benson was detained following an altercation at a casino parking structure. During booking, we discovered irregularities related to a line of credit opened using your identifying information. The coffee tasted burnt. What kind of irregularities? A casino marker, he said. $50,000. Your name and social security number were used as guarantor. My kitchen felt suddenly smaller. I didn't authorize anything I said. I understand, he replied. That's why I'm calling. We need to ask you a few questions and advise you to secure your financial accounts immediately. Is Kyle okay? I asked. A pause. He has injuries consistent with a physical struggle, non-life-threatening. He's being treated. However, he's also facing charges related to fraud and identity misuse. I leaned against the counter and stared at the calendar Elaine had hung last Christmas. Puppies and Santa hats. I'd circled my next union physical in red. Officer, I said I had no idea about any credit line. That's noted, he said. You may also be contacted by federal investigators if this escalates. I suggest you obtain copies of your credit report today. The call ended politely, professionally, like a man doing his job. I set the phone down and stood there until the coffee went cold in my hand. So that was it. Not a hospital bill. A trap. I grabbed my laptop and logged into my credit monitoring account, the one I'd signed up for after a coworker had his identity stolen by his own nephew. Back then, I'd told Elaine can't be too careful. She'd smiled and said I worried too much. The screen loaded. 3 soft inquiries in the last month. 1 hard inquiry from a casino-affiliated lender I didn't recognize. My chest tightened. I printed everything. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove to Rudy's Diner on Monroe Street. Rudy's was the kind of place that smelled like bacon grease and old coffee, where the mugs were thick and chipped and nobody rushed you out. It was where retired men went to remember who they were before their knees gave out. Ray Kovitz was already there, same booth he'd claimed since Reagan was in office. He wore his brown jacket with the frayed cuffs and had his glasses perched halfway down his nose, reading the sports page like it still mattered. Frank, he said, folding the paper. You look like hell. Morning to you too, I said, sliding into the booth. I set the printouts between us. Ray didn't touch them at first. He just looked at my face. This about Elaine's boy. I nodded. He finally picked up the papers, scanning slow, methodical, the way he used to audit suppliers when he was still on the job. His jaw tightened with every page. This wasn't sloppy, he said after a minute. This was planned. My stomach dropped. Planned how? Look at the dates, he said, tapping the paper. Soft pulls first, someone checking limits, then the hard inquiry. You don't do that unless you expect approval. I thought about Elaine's late nights on the couch phone glowing in the dark. He couldn't have done this alone. Ray took off his glasses. Frank, who has your documents? The diner noise faded, forks clinked somewhere far away. My wife, I said. Ray didn't look surprised. Then listen to me carefully. You don't confront anyone yet. You protect yourself. I rubbed my hands together. My fingers were cracked from winter air and factory solvent. Protect how? You freeze accounts. You pull full reports. You document everything he said. And you don't let guilt make decisions for you. Guilt, that word sat between us like an old enemy. Ray leaned back. Casino markers aren't like credit cards. They're closer to personal loans. When they go bad, people get desperate. And when people get desperate, they drag whoever they can down with them. My phone buzzed on the table. Elaine. I didn't answer. A text followed, then another. Elaine, please call me. Elaine, this is serious, Elaine. They're saying things that aren't true. I turned the phone face down. Ray nodded once. Good. We finished our coffee in silence. When I stood to leave, Ray put a hand on my arm. Frank, whatever you think you know about this situation, assume it's worse. I drove home slower than usual, every mile giving my thoughts room to stretch. Back in my living room, I opened the filing cabinet Elaine and I shared. Insurance papers, tax returns, medical statements, everything neat, everything labeled in her handwriting. At the back behind the homeowner's policy, I found an envelope I didn't recognize. Inside were copies of my social security card, my driver's license, and a pre-approval letter addressed to me dated 3 weeks earlier. My knees went weak. That's when my phone rang again. Different number this time. I answered. Mr. Whitmore, a woman said, voice tired but kind. This is Special Agent Karen Lewis with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We need to schedule an interview. I closed my eyes. About what I asked, though I already knew. About protecting you, she said, and understanding who thought using your name was safe. I hung up and stared at the wall. Elaine had said it herself. Safer name. I sat there until the furnace kicked on again, the sound filling the house like a warning bell. Whatever this was, it was bigger than a hospital bill. And it wasn't over. I didn't confront Elaine that night. That was the hardest part. Every instinct in me wanted to walk into the living room, drop the envelope on the coffee table, and ask her one simple question. Why? But Ray's voice kept looping in my head. Protect yourself first. So I did what inspectors do. I observed. I documented. I waited. Elaine came home around 7, snow melting off her boots, cheeks flushed like she'd been crying or yelling or both. She didn't look at me when she set her purse down. Kyle's stable, she said too quickly. They finally got him comfortable. I nodded. Good. She hovered, waiting for more. When nothing came, she filled the silence herself. The police are blowing things out of proportion. Casinos do this all the time. Kyle just signed some paperwork he didn't understand. I kept my eyes on the TV, a rerun of Jeopardy I'd already seen. Uh-huh. Her shoulders stiffened. Frank, you're acting strange. I turned to her then. Am I? She studied my face like she was checking for a fever. You didn't even ask how bad he's hurt. He's alive, I said. That's what matters. She nodded slowly like she'd won a small point. Exactly. So we need to be united right now. United. That word used to mean something to me. She went to bed early. I stayed up sitting at the dining table with my laptop and a yellow legal pad, the kind I'd used my whole career. The house was quiet except for the tick of the wall clock Elaine insisted on keeping because it reminded her of her father. I pulled full credit reports from all 3 bureaus. That's when the pattern showed itself. Not one big theft, a drip. Small cards opened and closed. Balance transfers that landed just under alert thresholds. Refunds from medical providers that had been rerouted to an account I didn't recognize, then zeroed out within hours. I traced the account. Elaine's maiden name was on it. My chest tightened, but my hand stayed steady. Write it down. Date, amount, source, destination. Inspectors don't panic. They measure. Around midnight, I found something that made me laugh out loud, one sharp, humorless bark that echoed in the empty room. Kyle's occupation listed on a credit application, logistics consultant. Yeah, I muttered, logistics. He'd been moving money all right, just not his own. The laugh faded, replaced by something heavier. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling, and without asking permission, a memory pushed its way in. Kyle at 16 gripping the steering wheel in the empty church parking lot, knuckles white. Easy, I told him. You don't fight the car, you guide it. He stalled 3 times, cursed, laughed, then finally rolled forward smooth as butter. Elaine had clapped from the steps like he'd just won the Indy 500. I'd been proud. God help me, I'd been proud. I snapped back to the present and underlined a number on the page. The total wasn't staggering yet, not compared to the plant guys who lost everything, but it was growing. Quietly, systematically. This wasn't Kyle freelancing stupidity. This was slow poison. The next morning I called Ray again. He came over that afternoon, snow crunching under his boots, his breath fogging the cold air. He didn't bother with pleasantries. We spread my papers across the table like a crime scene. Ray whistled low. She knows the system. She works the system, I said. He nodded. Medical billing teaches you how to sound urgent without being specific. People hear deposit and they stop thinking. I thought about that 2 a.m. call, the language, the pressure, the clock she'd put on me. Suffer all night. Ray tapped a line item. These refunds hear insurance overpayments. You ever see them? No, I said. She handled all that. He leaned back. Frank, this isn't just family drama. This is fraud. And if you don't separate yourself now, you'll be standing next to them when it collapses. That word again, separate. After Ray left, Elaine called me into the kitchen. She was holding her phone with both hands like it weighed something. They're saying Kyle might need surgery, she said. The hospital won't schedule it without a deposit. Which hospital? I asked. She blinked. What? Which hospital? I repeated. Her mouth opened, then closed. I'd have to check. I nodded. Do that. She stared at me, suspicion finally cracking through the panic. Why are you asking like that? Because every time you ask me for money, I said evenly, the details get fuzzy. Her eyes flashed. Are you accusing me of lying? I'm saying I'm done sending money without answers. She crossed her arms, defensive now. You've changed. No, I said. I stopped. She scoffed and walked away. That night after she fell asleep, I took my phone into the garage. The smell of oil and cold metal grounded me. I called my bank and froze every joint account. I changed passwords, I ordered new cards, all legal, all quiet. Before hanging up, I checked my voicemail. One new message, Kyle's voice, slurred angry. You think you're better than us now? Mom said you'd pull this. You always do this when things get hard. I deleted it. Standing there in the garage, staring at the pegboard of tools I'd bought with honest money, something settled in my chest. This wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. And I finally understood what Ray meant. I wasn't just the safer name. I was the anchor they planned to drown with. Elaine didn't yell after that. She shifted. That's how you know someone's scared, not when they get loud, but when they get careful. The next few days, she became sweetness itself. Cooked dinners I hadn't asked for. Touched my arm when she passed. Left the TV on low with old movies she knew I liked. It felt rehearsed, like watching someone follow instructions they didn't write. I played my part, ate the food, nodded at the right places, slept on my side of the bed. Inside, I was locking doors. On Tuesday morning, I went to the credit union on Central Avenue and asked to speak with a manager I'd known for years. Linda had gray hair and a voice that could cut through noise on the plant floor. I need to protect my pension, I told her. She didn't ask why. She slid a form across the desk and said, You wouldn't believe how often this comes up. That afternoon, I filed for a legal separation. Not divorce, separation. It mattered. Divorce would have forced everything into the open before I had my footing. Separation gave me space, financial and legal, without tipping my hand. Ray had explained it plainly. You don't start the fire while you're still standing in the house. Elaine noticed the change within hours. What's this? She asked, holding a bank notice she'd found on the counter. Account freeze, I said. Temporary. Her eyes darted. Why? Because my name's attached to things I didn't sign for? She went pale, then angry. This is because of Kyle, isn't it? This is because of me, I said. That night she cried. Real tears too, or at least they looked real. She sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. Frank, I'm scared. I feel like you're abandoning us. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, the same stance I'd taken during safety audits. Listen, don't interrupt. God tells us to forgive, she said softly. Families don't turn their backs. I felt it then, that old pull, the urge to fix things, to smooth it over, to be the steady one so everyone else could wobble. I'm not turning my back, I said. I'm stepping out of the way. She looked up sharply. What does that mean? It means I'm done being used, I said, and I'm done being lied to. Her mouth trembled. You don't know the whole story. I know enough, I said. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't squeeze back either. Her skin felt cold. Frank, she whispered. You've always been the safer name. There it was. She froze the second the words left her mouth. I didn't react, didn't raise my voice, didn't ask her to repeat it. I just nodded once like I'd heard a machine make a sound that told me exactly where the fault was. She knew what she'd said. I stood up. I'm going for a drive. I took the long way to the river past the old warehouses and the VFW hall with the faded flag out front. The radio crackled with farm reports and an ad for replacement windows. Normal sounds. Anchors. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck and let the recorder run. Not because I planned to trap her, because I needed to remember what truth sounded like. Over the next week, I kept my movements boring and predictable. Work, diner, home. No confrontations, no accusations. Behind the scenes, I gathered statements, emails, account histories. Ray helped me organize it into a timeline that read like a slow-motion fall. Kyle's gambling wasn't new. It went back 3 years. Online first, then regional casinos. Small wins, bigger losses. Elaine had covered early debts with refunds and transfers. When that wasn't enough, she moved to credit. When credit hit limits, she escalated. She hadn't just used my name. She'd planned around it. Friday evening, Elaine asked if I'd go with her to church on Sunday. I think we need God right now, she said. I looked at her for a long moment. We need honesty, I said, but I'll come. The sanctuary smelled like old wood and lemon cleaner. People smiled at us the way they always had. A few patted my shoulder. Praying for your boy, someone said. During the sermon, Elaine leaned against me, crying quietly. I stared straight ahead, listening to the pastor talk about stewardship and truth. The irony didn't escape me. Afterward, in the parking lot, Elaine pulled me aside. They're pressuring me, she said. The hospital, the casino, everyone. I know, I said. She searched my face. Will you help us? I shook my head. I'm helping myself. Her expression hardened. You're going to ruin us. No, I said. You already did that. I'm just refusing to help hide it. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Frank Whitmore. This is Special Agent Lewis, the woman said. We're ready to schedule your interview. And for what it's worth, you did the right thing by freezing your accounts. I hung up and sat in the dark living room, the clock ticking on the wall. Elaine was upstairs packing something, or pretending to. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. The slow burn was almost over. The federal building in Detroit smelled like floor wax and winter coats. It was the kind of place designed to drain emotion out of people. Beige walls, low ceilings, no windows where you'd want them. Justice wasn't meant to be dramatic. It was meant to be final. Elaine walked in 10 minutes late, heels clicking too loud for the room. She wore a navy coat she'd bought last fall with money I recognized from a medical reimbursement. Her hair was perfect. Her eyes were red enough to look convincing. Kyle came in through a side door with a public defender at his elbow. He looked smaller than I remembered. Puffy face, split lip, rib brace under his jacket. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I sat alone on the hard bench, folder on my lap, hands folded the way I'd learned to sit during disciplinary hearings at the plant. Calm, still, prepared. When the judge entered, the room stood. Chairs scraped. Someone coughed. This was it. The prosecutor spoke first. Calm voice, clean timeline. Casino markers opened under my name. Credit cards tied to my social security number. Refunds routed through accounts I didn't control. Recorded calls, bank statements, dates, amounts. Paper doesn't care about feelings. Elaine shifted in her seat when her maiden name came up. She leaned toward her attorney, whispering too fast. Kyle stared at the floor. Then my name came up. Mr. Whitmore, the judge said, peering over his glasses. You are listed on multiple documents as a guarantor. Did you authorize any of these accounts? No, Your Honor, I said. My voice didn't shake. I didn't know they existed until last week. The judge nodded. And when you discovered them? I froze my accounts. I reported the activity. I cooperated fully. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, we'd like to introduce Exhibit D. A man stood from the back of the room. Mid-50s, broad shoulders, work boots, nervous hands. This is Derek Benson, the prosecutor said. The biological father of Kyle Benson. Elaine's head snapped up. Kyle finally looked at someone. Derek cleared his throat. I've been paying child support since Kyle was born, he said. I tried to stay in contact. Elaine changed numbers. Moved. Told me Kyle didn't want to see me. Elaine shot to her feet. That's not true. The judge raised a hand. Sit down, ma'am. Derek kept going. I found out about the casino mess when a collection agency called me last month. Said I was the father. That's when I learned my son had been using Frank's name. Kyle's face crumpled. Mom said you wouldn't help, he muttered. Derek looked at him, pain plain as day. I would have helped you get treatment. I wouldn't have helped you gamble. The room went quiet. The prosecutor played the recording. Elaine's voice filled the courtroom, tinny but unmistakable. You were always the safer name to use. No context, no explanation. Just the truth, naked and ugly. Elaine covered her mouth. The judge leaned back, exhaled slowly. Mrs. Whitmore, do you dispute the authenticity of this recording? Elaine's lawyer whispered urgently. She shook her head. Kyle's public defender stood. Your Honor, my client was injured. He was under duress. Your client committed fraud, the judge said. While injured, both things can be true. He turned to me. Mr. Whitmore, the court finds no evidence you authorized or benefited from these actions. All claims against you are dismissed. Something loosened in my chest, not relief exactly, release. Then the hammer fell. Elaine was charged with conspiracy to commit financial fraud and identity misuse. Kyle's charges were reduced but not erased: fraud, assault, mandatory treatment. Kyle slumped in his chair like a puppet with cut strings. Elaine stood shaking. Frank, she said, stepping toward me as the judge called recess. Please, I was just trying to protect my son. I stood too slow and deliberate. People were watching, clerks, lawyers, strangers who would forget us by dinner. I spent 17 years protecting him, I said quietly. You spent them using me. Her mouth opened, closed. I paid my last bill for you, I said. It's called the truth. She reached for my sleeve. I stepped back. In the hallway, reporters hovered but didn't pounce. This wasn't a scandal big enough to trend. It was small-town justice, the kind that ruins lives quietly. A man from my church stood near the elevators. He'd told me once that abandoning family was a sin. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Ray called me that night from his recliner. You okay? I am, I said, and for the first time it was true. Justice didn't cheer, it didn't clap. It just stood there, stamped and signed, and let me walk out. I moved in April when Lake Erie was still steel gray and stubborn with cold. The house sold faster than I expected. A young couple with a baby on the way wanted the quiet street and the paid-off bones. I wished them luck and meant it. I took what I needed and left the rest. Funny how little you actually own once you stop propping up other people's lives. I rented a small place near the water outside Sandusky. 1 floor, no stairs. A porch that faced east so the morning light hit the coffee mug just right. The first night there, I slept with the window cracked and woke up to gulls instead of a phone buzzing with panic. Elaine wrote once, a letter, not a text, handwritten. I recognized the slant immediately. She said she was sorry, said she never meant for it to go that far, said fear makes people do things they don't recognize. I didn't write back. Not because I was angry. Anger takes energy. I was done spending mine. Kyle entered treatment as part of his sentence. I heard that secondhand through Ray, who heard it from someone at the plant whose cousin worked at county court. I wished the kid well and meant that too, but wishing someone well doesn't require you to carry them anymore. The church stopped calling. So did most of the people who'd had opinions before they had facts. A few weeks later, one man from my old bowling league found me. He sat down beside me at the Marina Cafe, ordered black coffee, and cleared his throat. I was wrong, he said. I judged before I knew. I nodded. Happens. That was it. No speeches, no absolution ceremony. Just 2 men watching boats bob and pretending that was enough, because sometimes it is. Life got smaller in a good way. I started volunteering 1 morning a week at the Union Hall, helping guys my age figure out paperwork they'd been avoiding. Pensions, beneficiaries, boundaries disguised as forms. You'd be surprised how many men don't know who's listed on their accounts. On Sundays, I cooked for myself. Real meals. Simple ones. Nothing that needed rescuing. Sometimes sitting on the porch with the lake wind in my face, I'd think back to that night, the 2 a.m. call, the demand, the way my heart had raced when I said no. I used to believe love meant never letting people fall. Now I know better. Love without limits isn't love, it's liability. Revenge didn't come with shouting or slamming doors. It came with silence, paperwork, and the quiet decision to stop paying for someone else's lies. It came with waking up and realizing the only person I had to carry was myself. If you're listening to this and you've ever been treated like a wallet instead of a partner, if you've ever been told that your worth was measured by how much you could fix, I want you to know something. You're allowed to stop. You're allowed to protect what you earn. And you're allowed to sleep through the night. If this story felt familiar, take a moment. Think about where your boundaries should be. If you want to share your experience, I'm listening. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories about choosing dignity over guilt, consider staying with us. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is hang up the phone.